Some of you are not going to want to hear this. Some of you will not like this. Some of you will be enraged. But it must be said. Voting rights is a garbage issue for the Democrats. Voting rights is a garbage issue. The truth, the reality, is that there is nowhere in America today where it is harder to vote than it was 40 years ago. There's nowhere in America today where it is harder to vote than it was 60 years ago. There's nowhere in America today that it is harder to vote than it was 100 years ago. In America today, everywhere in all locations, it is easier to vote now than then. And people understand this. But it is breaking Democrats' minds. Georgia's Senator Raphael Warnock went on The View. And he wants you to know if you oppose what he wants to do. You know, Joe Biden said last week, if you oppose their voting plan, you're a racist. Well, Raphael Warnock said, hold my beer. Went on television. I want you to know if you oppose what they're doing, you are anti-American.
Well, it's disheartening, and I have to be honest. I am saddened by where we are right now. But Dr. King was a sober-minded soldier in the nonviolent fight for freedom, and he knew that it would not be easy. He used to say that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And so he kept bending that arc then. We have to keep bending that arc now. It's not unusual to have this kind of backlash. You know, when you take two steps forward, often there is pushback driven by fear and bigotry. But the good news is we do have the tools in the Senate to do something about this. We can pass voting rights. Democrats have the slimmest of majorities, but we have the majority nonetheless. Sadly, our colleagues on the other side have chosen power and politics over a commitment to democracy. They are trying to turn democracy on its head. So that rather than the people picking their politicians, the politicians are trying to cherry pick their voters. It is anti-democratic. It is anti-American.
You got that? It is anti-American. You disagree with Raphael Warnock, you are anti-American. You're a racist and you're anti-American. You hate the country. Isn't it amazing Raphael Warnock and the Democrats could accuse the Republicans of undermining American democracy, and their solution is to undermine the Republican institutions of our democracy by using 50 votes and an unpopular president and his even more unpopular vice president to scuttle the traditions of the United States Senate that they have defined as racist when they're not, in order to advance their agenda to keep themselves in power. Who is the real threat to our republic? The Republicans or the Democrats? It is the Democrats, after all, who are trying to use a tied Senate to break the rules of the Senate. It takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate to change the rules. What Raphael Warnock wants to do is use 50 votes and the tie-breaking vote of an unpopular vice president to unilaterally change the rules of the Senate to pass legislation designed to keep Democrats in power. It is specifically designed to keep Democrats in power. The Democrats, Raphael Warnock himself, believes that the Republicans are a threat to democracy and anti-American, and the only way to stop them is to secure Democratic power in Washington. It is a waste of time and a garbage issue. It has broken the brains of Democrats. It is a distraction from the real issues. Now, I don't know who Bill Pinsey is. Pinsey Spices. It is a spice company, and some of you are customers of Pinsey Spices. The only reason I know this is because I've gotten emails from many of you with the article, with this story. Some of you got the email itself. The CEO of Pinsey Spices renamed, and this is from Fox News, the extended Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend to be the, quote, Republicans are racist weekend, in a recent newsletter to customers, wherein he said his aim was to anger Republicans in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Pinsey spent much of his letter praising Black Lives Matter and the movement's actions following the death of George Floyd, before suggesting Republicans fantasize about killing black people. Here's his quote. Remember how Republicans, going against a mountain of evidence to the contrary, once again lied and said BLM wasn't a peaceful movement, but instead terrorists inciting violence throughout the country, and then raced off to buy a crap load of guns because maybe they were finally going to get their chance to shoot a black person. What a bunch of racists. And he's calling Republican voters the number one threat to the country and saying the Democrats need to scuttle the filibuster and ram through their voting reforms. Why? Well, essentially to protect the Democratic majority. I've never shopped at Pinsey Spices. A lot of you apparently have. And you should understand, if you're a Republican, the CEO hates you. He believes you're a racist. He believes you're a threat to the country and believes that you want to destroy the country and kill black people. That's unfortunate. He's allowed his view, though. While he's doing this, this is the White House message this morning. And again, I need to make you understand this is a garbage issue for the Democrats. I'm setting the stage for you here. This is the message from the official account for the President of the United States today. It was sent out at 9:21 this morning. Jim Crow 2.0. Notice he's embracing Stacey Abrams' talking point there. Jim Crow 2.0 is about two insidious things: voter suppression and election subversion. It's about making it harder to vote, who gets to count the vote, and whether your vote counts at all. We have to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Have to pass them both, he says. Joe Biden, a man who told black voters Republicans wanted to put them back in chains. Friends, it's a garbage issue. Now, come November, when the Republicans win, Democrats will be able to console themselves curled up in the fetal position and claim it was all voter suppression. Just as Republicans in 2020 said Democrats stole the election, Democrats now will be able to claim Republicans stole the election. But notice, I'm presuming a Republican wave. Why? Say it with me. Voting rights is a garbage issue. Why? Because no one cares. Nobody cares about voting rights. The only people who care about voting rights are the progressive activist base. And for them, Joe Biden flew to Georgia last week and said anyone who disagrees with him is a racist, and then over the weekend had to walk it all back. CNN ran the report that Joe Biden was telling his Senate friends that he really didn't mean to call them racist. He wasn't really talking about humans being racist. That was his spin over the weekend. He had to walk it all back. All of the rhetoric that Joe Biden advanced, he then had to walk back to tell people that actually he didn't mean to call them all racist. He didn't mean it to them. He didn't mean to hurt their feelings. Now, why would they have to do that? Because they know they damaged themselves. They damaged their ability to get things done. And now they've done a couple of things bad, politically, objectively bad. They've spun up their base, and they have no ability to get anything done. They did a speech last week in Georgia, according to sources at the White House, to Chuck Todd of Meet the Press. They had to do it because the base was angry, and they needed Biden to do it. And so now Biden has done it, and what's the result? Nothing. Now, what has happened? And here's why it's a garbage issue. They're not going to get their legislation passed. And what else? It has distracted them from everything else. They had a message that could potentially neutralize a Republican wave. They passed a COVID relief package and they passed an infrastructure bill. And the Republicans have blocked everything else. But that's not their message. Their message is Republicans are racist. Their message is, if you don't support them, you're anti-American. And they haven't taken on inflation. They haven't taken on education. You know, in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin has signed an executive order saying parents get to decide whether they want their kids to be in masks or not at school. And the left has blown up about it. How dare he allow parents to decide what's in the best interest of their children? The Michigan Democratic Party sent out a tweet over MLK weekend and said that parents should have no say in the education of their children. It is about the common good, and the community itself gets to decide what kids need to learn for the common good, not parents. In Virginia, when Glenn Youngkin said that parents should have a say in their education, the Democrats in the state legislature sat on their hands. They've distracted themselves on an issue no one cares about except the most rabid part of their base, and it is an issue that they cannot get accomplished. This is politics 101, y'all. This isn't hard. It's really not hard. I've run campaigns. Know when you're in the minority, even when you think you're right. A majority of Americans do not care about this issue. They care about the issue, and they should tell people, we care about this issue. Unfortunately, Republicans are blocking this. Meanwhile, we have these other things we've done. We've been able to pass COVID relief. We've been able to pass an infrastructure bill. Bridges and roads are going to get repaired. People are going to go back to work doing these things. We're going to help people get back on their feet, and we're going to help their communities. We're going to pave their roads. We're going to make it easier for you to get to work. We're going to build more highways, more toll lanes, more railways. We're going to get people back to work. Nope, that's not their message. Their message is, you are a racist. And by the way, their message is, there is no crime wave. There's no crime wave out there. Union Pacific Railroad. There was a video taken, a newscast in Los Angeles, went out to the Union Pacific Rail line and found a bunch of Amazon packages that were all ripped open and the stuff stolen out of the packages. I mean, massive debris field where people are getting onto trains. And in fact, in one case, a group of people blocked railroad tracks so the train could not move. And then they ransacked it, pulling TVs and the like off of this train in Los Angeles. Union Pacific is going to have to divert its port traffic away from that line somewhere else. They're actively trying to find ways to avoid sending the train through that part of Los Angeles because the police are doing nothing. At a time of a global pandemic and supply shortages and supply chain issues, a railway is having to divert itself because neither the federal government nor the state or local government will protect it and its cargo from the ransacking marauders of Los Angeles. Trying to escape from LA here. You need Kurt Russell to deal with you. But voting rights. This is why it's a garbage issue. It's a distraction from everything else. Now, it's probably the only one they think they can run on. They've got to find a way to paint the Republicans as bad, but it's not working. If you weren't here in the first hour, I pointed out the Gallup poll now has the people ID with the Republican Party higher than the Democratic Party. It's actually the highest Republican identification in a very long time. Because Donald Trump's out of the way and Joe Biden is there. And what's Joe Biden doing? He and Raphael Warnock and others want you to know you're a racist, anti-American if you don't support their voting rights agenda. Meanwhile, you just want to go to the grocery store and buy milk and there isn't any. You just want to go to the grocery store and buy toilet paper and it's gone again too. You want to go to the grocery store and buy products and the shelves are empty. Y'all, I was at the grocery store this weekend. Now keep in mind, we also had a big ice storm come through the Southeast. There was no milk. There was no bread. There was beer. I got beer. There was no milk. There was no bread. There are still those sports drinks. My gosh, what did Pepsi Cola do to poop the bed on Gatorade supply chain issues? There hadn't been Gatorade in months at the grocery store. Powerades no better. There wasn't chicken the other day. This week there wasn't pork. Toilet paper and paper towels were again in short supply. Do you know what else there wasn't at the grocery store this weekend? Potatoes in the freezer section. There were no tater tots. There were no shoestring potatoes. There were no crinkle fries. There were no waffle fries. There were no potatoes this weekend at the grocery store. Do you know how I know? Because on the weekends, if you follow me on Instagram at EW Erickson, you'll see on the weekend I do burger and fry night or chicken strip and fry night. My kids like for me to get my fancy grill on the back porch and fry up French fries and either grill hamburgers or make chicken fingers. And I do it on the weekend. But there were no fries. I found one bag. Of Idaho favorites, and it turns out it's from Lamb Weston. I own stock in that company, so I felt good buying the French fries. But it was the only bag. They didn't even have Ore-Ida tater tots at the grocery store this weekend. And you know what? I didn't just go to one grocery store. I went to two different grocery stores, and they were all out of frozen potato products, and they were all out of paper towels. Some of them had toilet paper, but not much. It was the one-ply garbage I don't buy. That's what people are concerned about. And Joe Biden and the Democrats have decided to pick a garbage issue, an issue no one cares about, an issue no one's concerned about, an issue no one's bellyaching about except the loudest, angriest people in their base. And their solution is to tell everyone else, if you don't come along for the ride, you're an anti-American racist. And that's not going to fly with the voters who just want their tater tots and beer.